A volatile severe weather outbreak with violent tornadoes likely today and tomorrow, and severe weather continuing into Sunday. Welcome in, everybody. Great to see you on this Friday. And unfortunately, we're talking about the stuff that we don't want to happen, but part of the weather is giving you the info whether we want it or not. And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to show you the latest model guidance, the data we have, and my thoughts on that data, and who has the highest threat of seeing significant tornadoes, potentially even getting up in that EF3 and 4 range, not out of the question with this sort of setup. Now, if you haven't already, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell for the latest notifications, and share the video. If you know somebody in this area that's going to be impacted, get the word out to them. Tell them this is on the way so everyone kind of has a bit of a heads up. We don't want anyone caught off guard as the storm moves on through. Also, thank you to our channel members. Appreciate you folks. And if you'd like to become a channel member, you can go ahead and hit the join button down below next to the subscribe button. All right, folks, with that said, let's just dive right on into it today because, again, a lot going on and a lot to discuss. So next to me is the latest run of our North American NAM computer model. And you can definitely kind of see that outbreak of severe weather as it begins today, continuing into tomorrow, and then the loop stopping right here on Sunday afternoon, where we could once again see more severe weather by that time frame. Now, this really isn't just one storm system. In fact, it's kind of two storm systems. We've got one moving in today and then another tomorrow. And the reason that this is going to be such a long time period of severe weather is the fact that this is two separate storm systems, both being enhanced in the upper levels by pretty significant amounts. So that's a little overview of what's to come. Now let's quickly take a look at this storm system on satellite. I think that's a great way to start this analysis. And you can see it. It's not hard to find. You see this big swirl and spin beginning over Colorado and New Mexico. That's going to move off towards the north and east throughout the day today. And by this evening, fire up a line of significant severe weather into Kansas, Missouri, and all the way back up into Iowa, and push off towards the east-northeast throughout the overnight hours, where this could become a nocturnal tornado threat for some folks in that community. And while that's ongoing, we're going to have crazy snow up here into Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, with very strong winds blowing snow. And at the same time, just insane winds out here near New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma, where winds could be gusting up near hurricane strength, really starting right now throughout the day today in that region as the storm pulls out of the Rockies and gets into the Great Plains. Now, the latest current alerts from the National Weather Service begin to paint that picture of an active time frame. All of these kind of bright yellow boxes, or I'm not exactly sure what color you want to call them, but the areas I have circled here on the map, these are high wind warnings. Again, I told you, winds could be gusting up near hurricane strength, and then the hot pink colors that you see, these are red flag warnings for fire danger. We've got very strong winds, obviously, as I just talked about, and behind this storm, very dry air going to push in, and that's going to very likely lead to a pretty high-end fire risk. In fact, one of the higher ends that we can really get on the scale. And that's, again, a story not being talked a lot about, but this is just such a dynamic storm when you have so much severe weather. The snowy side up here in blue with winter storm watches, and then kind of the fire weather side down south with the wind and the dry air kind of get put on hold a little bit, but all of it's important and all of it is on the way with this storm system really starting today. Now, taking a look at current radar out there, you can definitely kind of get the general idea of what's happening. We've got some snow up here into the Rockies. We've got crazy snow and rain back into California. Relatively calm still east of the Rockies, but that's going to change throughout this afternoon in a pretty big way, and you'll see that here whenever we analyze future radar. Now, let's go ahead and dive right into the important information. This is the latest from the Storm Prediction Center, showing their outlook for this afternoon. So a moderate risk, that's a level 4 out of 5 here in red for severe weather. That includes St. Louis, Bloomington, all the way down to Memphis, Jackson, up into Paducah, Cape Girardeau, Poplar Bluff, Farmington into Jefferson City, Columbia, Missouri, Jacksonville, Illinois, Macomb, Decatur, and then now stretching all the way up into Iowa, including Des Moines, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids southbound, and then even Davenport in that threat area, and just the threat of severe weather in general. Anyone could see severe weather today from Duluth, Minnesota, all the way down to the Gulf coastline and the bayous of Louisiana. So just to show you how potent and active this pattern is. I mean, this is one of the biggest kind of severe weather outlooks we really often see. And unfortunately, this does include the threat of tornadoes. In the red here is where we're going to have that highest threat. And I really couldn't agree with this map much more. Here from St. Louis, back down again towards Cape Girardeau, the Boot Hill of Missouri, Poplar Bluff. This does include Mayfield and Paducah, Union City, Tennessee, back down towards Jackson, Brownsville, Memphis. And then you kind of zoom out, and the 10% area to see tornadoes goes all the way up near Davenport, including Bloomington, into Quincy, Springfield, Effingham, Jefferson City, Columbia, and then stretches all the way down into Hattiesburg, Tupelo, Jackson, Meridian, and then kind of the western sections there of Alabama. Another thing to note, you see how kind of part of this is shaded in anywhere in the yellow and the red on the map here. This is where we're likely to see EF2 or higher strength tornadoes today. So those are what we call SIG-TORs, or significant tornadoes. That's going to, again, be anywhere in that area that we'll need to watch for that potential. The biggest threat, though, today is going to be straight line winds to the north. That's where Iowa has now been included in that moderate risk. Anywhere from Des Moines to Bloomington, back down towards the Boot Hill, including St. Louis, Jefferson City. That's where we're going to see very strong straight line winds. Also hatched, meaning this could be 70, 80 mile an hour wind gusts embedded in this line of storms today in that region. And then for our hail threat, generally lower than the other threats, but still quite high compared to an average day here. Highest hail threat's going to be from St. Louis down to Memphis and Jackson, and kind of all points in between there, where we're going to get a little bit more of a discrete storm mode. It's going to allow those updrafts to become a little bit stronger and really suspend that hail a little bit longer in the storm, and thus it becomes bigger. All right, so let's time it out for you. Here's the latest model. This is our high resolution rapid refresh. So I'm going to switch the models up a little bit for you. I think this one's doing a pretty good job. Time right above my head. That's technically an Eastern Standard Time, I believe. So subtract an hour if you're in the plains, but either way, give or take an hour anyway, just for model error when looking at this sort of thing. All right, so we're pretty quiet here up until about 1, 2, 3 o'clock-ish, and you begin to see some storms firing here right into southern and southwestern Iowa and into northwestern Missouri. This will be the start of the action, and eventually this is pretty quickly going to kind of turn into a discrete line of storms. Now, is it a bit of a 1-2 punch today? That's something to note for sure. If this does happen and we get cluster 1 and then cluster 2, watch this first cluster right in here for a tornado potential. Absolutely could happen. In fact, probably will produce tornadoes if it unfolds like this model projects. And then after that, a new line of storms forms, and that brings the wind threat. So you can already see just an insane kind of a bow echo shape to this. That just tells me we've got an insane kind of push in the atmosphere here, a very strong cold pool behind the storms kind of pushing through here. And that's what's going to produce those very strong straight line winds. Again, this is now getting around sunset tonight. So that's the first round of storms. That's the first mode of storms. And then we'll pause it again right about here. This is getting towards 10 p.m. We're going to have strong straight line winds with the line kind of in this segment that I have circled into Iowa with embedded tornadoes. And then you get south of there towards St. Louis, Farmington, and then eventually down into the Boot Hill. During the overnight hours of tonight, that's when the tornado threat really maximizes, I would say. You see where these storms are a little bit more discrete down that way, a little bit more on their own. That's where we're going to have a higher end tornado threat. That's again where I think EF2s, 3s, and cannot rule out an EF4 is going to be possible in that region. And that does include St. Louis. And then you keep on going. And eventually throughout the evening and the overnight, this is about 3 a.m., it all kind of congeals back together into a line, but we'll still maintain a strong straight line wind threat through Chicago. It's going to maintain a tornado threat, an isolated tornado threat through Illinois, Indiana, into Kentucky, and down towards Tennessee. And that gets us all the way into tomorrow morning. This keeps on pushing through Indiana, through Ohio by about 5 a.m. And by the way, I didn't show you the map. I'll show you next. But Ohio is in a threat risk for tomorrow as well. And here's why. Check out tomorrow morning. We've still got that line of storms, and generally speaking, still somewhat discrete. So watch Ohio tomorrow morning down through Kentucky, Indiana. A bit of a isolated tornado threat in the morning could definitely become something we need to watch. And while all that's going on the backside, check out the snow in this thing. It's kind of circled area on your map. That's where we could see 3 to 5 inches of snow, blowing winds, blizzard-like conditions, and winter storm conditions there in that region. of the storm as that low pressure cranks up 975 millibars. I mean, yeah, that's gonna provide plenty of energy in the atmosphere for severe weather and winter weather. All right, and then you keep it going into tomorrow afternoon up into this region. I think another round of storms. So I'm kind of now at this point focusing on Ohio and Indiana. We'll talk about Kentucky and points south on the next map. Don't worry. But you see maybe another line of storms tomorrow afternoon, a hail threat, a wind threat, a tornado threat, kind of a 1-2 punch in areas of Ohio. If you're watching from there, or just if you're watching from anywhere, let me know where in the comments. But definitely watching rounds of severe weather in that region tomorrow. That gets us into tomorrow afternoon and evening, where more rounds of thunderstorms, strong winds, and heavy rain continues through that area. All right, let's go ahead and bring it down south a little bit. This is now just for Friday. So I talked about Friday and Saturday for areas further north, but just for tonight and into early tomorrow morning, let's talk about that through this region. So here we go. We'll pause it. This is about 4 p.m. Still not much going on, but you begin to see some storms firing up near Arkansas and Louisiana right around peak heating this afternoon. I think they only become more widespread throughout the evening. Here we go, about 10 p.m. This is when the tornado threat begins to increase, the hail threat, just the supercell threat in general. Again, St. Louis kind of southbound through Memphis. That corridor is where I'm watching, and that includes southern Illinois as well, I will add, for the potential of isolated cells to produce strong tornadoes. We've got plenty of wind shear. We've got enough instability CAPE around 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram. Our SRH values are basically our spin in the atmosphere. It's basically off the charts this evening, really as high as they often get. So that region, you can see it's going to be the peak. And I'll mention again, this is a nocturnal thing. This is 10, 11 p.m. tonight. The sun's not out anymore, even with the added hour at 10 p.m. And a lot of folks going to bed at that point on Friday. It might have been a long week and you might be done. You got to have a way to get warnings overnight tonight. You have to have a way that it'll wake you up if it's issued. And NOAA weather radio is a great way to do it. It'll kind of, blow up if a warning is issued, and then you'll have that go ahead to go get to the center room in your building or your house, windows, lowest level. If you got a basement or a storm cellar, that's preferred. And if you live in a mobile home, I recommend tonight just maybe staying with family members somewhere else, a little more sturdy. Might be a safer bet. Same thing for tomorrow down into Dixie Alley. We'll talk about that threat area next up. But that'll be the peak of it, I think, this evening, right around that time frame in this region. Now, further north again, it'll turn into a straight line wind threat with an embedded tornado threat through Iowa and up through northern Illinois. But St. Louis, kind of southbound through southern Illinois, the Boot Hill, western Kentucky, western Tennessee, northern Mississippi, and Arkansas is where we'll need to watch for that tornado threat to really materialize during the overnight. Now, we'll keep on going, and this continues into a line of storms in Nashville overnight tonight, early tomorrow morning. That line of storms is going to come knocking on through. And again, I think anywhere in Kentucky or Tennessee could see an overnight tornado. Same thing for southern Indiana. So really anywhere kind of in this region, watch the overnight for that tornado threat. Again, have those ways to get warnings if they are issued. And then we'll pause it right here tomorrow morning. It'll be interesting to see on radar what's left over from tonight. Does it all kind of die off, or do we wake up tomorrow morning and still have some leftover storms kind of in that region that could play havoc on the forecast in a couple ways, and I'll talk about that next up. But I do want to show you this. This is our energy helicity index from 0 to 1 kilometers, and I'll briefly explain this. This is basically where do we have updrafts that are kind of turning these horizontal rolls into the vertical and getting that helical shape, kind of the shape of a tornado, right? So just to give you the kind of parameters on this, once you start getting above about a 1 on this one, that's when things start to become a little bit more probable that we'll see a couple tornadoes. Once you start getting above about a 2 or a 3, that's whenever it becomes quite likely that we're going to get tornadoes in this region. And this is this afternoon. Again, you'll notice ingredients beginning to increase. Also, watch that little pocket to begin with. Again, like I said, into Iowa and Missouri, that could produce some early evening and afternoon tornadoes. Kind of its own little discrete mode there. But then we get into the overnight, and that's when things unfortunately go downhill pretty quickly. Values here, anywhere from 3 to 5, even a couple 6s trying to get mixed in here. I mean, that's plenty high enough to go ahead and tell you we're going to have severe weather potential. And we go into the overnight. This is into early tomorrow morning, folks. Still tornado risks into Kentucky, western Tennessee, northern Mississippi, and getting up into Indiana as well. Again, this is late tonight into early tomorrow morning. The timing here from midnight to about 8 a.m., tomorrow, and then watches that little area of ingredients gets up into Ohio. This is early afternoon tomorrow. So watching Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky for kind of rounds of severe weather. One tonight, another tomorrow, all capable of producing tornadoes. Then you can see down south that Saturday threat. This is late during the morning and early afternoon on Saturday, beginning to develop back down towards Alabama and Mississippi. I will also briefly show you the significant tornado parameters. Let's see if we have it. So this is our SIGTOR, same thing, but instead of just a tornado, it's now showing the chances of significant tornadoes. Again, those EF2, 3s, 4s, and then, obviously 5s exist, but I don't want to kind of speak that into existence with this setup. Notice, again, really blowing up. You see a huge blow up in Arkansas this evening. I think the question will be, do we even have storms there? So yeah, the ingredients are there for a tornado if a storm is there. But obviously, I think we're going to have a line of storms further north up here. You can see where the SIGTOR ingredients are a little bit less. It's more of a wind threat. But you get down south, I think the highest mixing of these ingredients plus the fact that there will definitely be storms in the region going to kind of be in that circle here I have. From the Boot Hill, southern Illinois, western Kentucky, and then into kind of the extreme northwestern portions of Tennessee and northeastern portions of Arkansas. But those SIGTOR ingredients, off the charts, folks. I mean, we're talking about 5s and 6s here. That's really high on the scale. And then that keeps on going eastbound. And again, a SIGTOR threat remains into the overnight tonight. And you see that little burst of ingredients kind of pull northward as well. So watching that. All right, that gets us into tomorrow, and a moderate risk in effect for tomorrow still. They expanded the moderate, and I'll just go and tell you now, they're basically making room for a high risk is what they're doing. So my guess would be likely waking up tomorrow, you're going to see maybe even as early as this afternoon, they'll add a high risk or kind of some pink Sharpie on this map, kind of brought into this area through southern Mississippi, portions of Louisiana and Alabama. And unfortunately, this is being driven off the threat of tornadoes. Yeah, we've got a big tornado threat, 15% chance of a tornado, maybe even a significant tornado within a 25-mile radius of any point. So, for example, let's just take a town here and say, we'll go with Meridian, I guess. So if you're in Meridian, basically they're saying anywhere from Meridian to Newton in that kind of corridor has about a 15% chance of a tornado tomorrow. And I know 15% doesn't sound like a lot, but you start adding a 15% here and then a 15% here and a 15% there and here and so on and so forth in all these little towns, somebody's going to get it. Somebody's going to get a tornado, including the potential of a significant one tomorrow. And that threat area extends all the way up into Nashville, Knoxville, Atlanta, Columbus, Albany, back down into New Orleans. I think tomorrow morning could be rocking and rolling in New Orleans with that tornado threat. I'll talk about why in just a second. But anywhere in the yellow or red area could see a significant tornado, EF2 or higher tomorrow. And then by the time you get to tomorrow night, this spreads even into the upstate of South Carolina, Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson, up towards Asheville, Hendersonville, the Tri-Cities of Tennessee. And then also tomorrow, including the morning and afternoon with rounds of severe weather, Kentucky up through Ohio, southern Indiana, portions of West Virginia, rounds of severe weather in that region. As for the wind threat tomorrow, I mean, again, just off the charts, we're definitely going to see strong straight line winds, damaging winds down south. But the threat, it really extends all the way up into Ohio, even into the Cleveland area for tomorrow. And then for hail, a little bit higher back towards kind of the Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana area, and then even extends up into Nashville. So those are the threat areas for tomorrow. Let's time it out for you now and give you the latest model guidance here. Again, the high resolution rapid refresh. Let me back it up for you and get to right around 5 a.m. tomorrow. In fact, let's move it to 7 a.m. How about that? All right, so I told you these are two different storms. What's going to happen tomorrow is a new area of low pressure is going to develop right along the Mississippi River. It's going to strengthen quickly. It's going to provide the wind energy and just pull up a ton of moisture from the Gulf. And that's what's going to set the stage for a very volatile warm sector, having the wind component and the instability component for severe weather. Now, waking up tomorrow, do we have storms already in the area? That's a key question, I think. And that could play two different ways. If we have storms already, generally you're thinking, all right, well, that's going to stabilize the atmosphere, we'll be good. Yes and no. It will stabilize the atmosphere in the morning, but what it could also do is kind of cap the environment until the afternoon, and that could cause even bigger problems. So, for example, what might happen is you get this to happen. You got some morning storms in Alabama, and you don't really have them back towards Tennessee, or I guess Mississippi, excuse me, and then western Tennessee and Louisiana so much. So what happens is you get into the early morning hours and, well, we haven't really been, we weren't stabilized in the morning, further back out towards the west. So then earlier on in the day, about noon, 1 o'clock, you get storms to fire into Louisiana and Mississippi. bringing that tornado threat, but we're still stable in Alabama. Again, we had storms in the morning, so we're still kind of clear. And then you kind of see that initial batch of severe weather pulls up into Mississippi, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, up into Tennessee, and eventually towards Kentucky by the early afternoon. Then what happens, though, is you've got all afternoon that warm sector rejuvenating in Alabama, severe weather, supercells. I mean, classic kidney-shaped beans out here into Mississippi. This will likely be the start of the outbreak from Meridian to Jackson, back down towards New Orleans. This is tomorrow afternoon about 3 p.m. While that's going on out there, we're still, rejuvenating in Alabama. We've got all day for maybe some peaks of sun to come out. This is, again, about 3 p.m. Things keep on going downhill. And then these supercells move into that environment that hasn't been tapped into since the morning and has been kind of capped off. And then you could really, again, see that tornado threat continue in a big way. And further north, we could see some tornadoes into Tennessee, definitely kind of the southern edge of the warm front here. So basically where you see this shield of rain, anything to the south of that is our warm sector. So kind of right here is your warm sector of severe weather potential. And this will pull northward throughout the day. So once you get in the warm sector, then you'll have a higher chance of getting into that severe weather potential. So kind of the southern edge of those storms into Tennessee going to be an area to watch. And then obviously these single-celled supercells or discrete supercells back towards Alabama and Mississippi going to be a big concern. And then kind of congeals into a line by the overnight. This is about 2 a.m. Embedded tornadoes, strong straight line winds from Kentucky all the way down into Atlanta, southern Alabama, the Florida Panhandle, and that'll push east throughout the day Sunday. So the peak of it, though, let me back it up again. Right here is going to be the peak of it, I think. You're going to have these individual supercells into Mississippi tracking into Alabama. This is about 3 p.m. tomorrow. This will be the worst of it, I'll tell you right now. This is where we're going to see those long track significant tornadoes. I mean, these things could go 100 miles without leaving the ground, or at least cycling maybe a couple times over 100 miles distance. And that's when multiple communities get hit by the same tornado. And that's what tomorrow, unfortunately, is looking like. One of the reasons for it is this map. This is the Energy Helicity Index, same thing I showed you earlier. But for Saturday, check out Saturday. We'll kind of pause right here early morning. Already, again, pretty unstable into Mississippi and Louisiana. I think down here, we could see a morning and early afternoon tornado threat, including New Orleans, Baton Rouge, anywhere in and around Lake Pontchartrain over to Gulfport, and then up towards the Meridian and Jackson area during Saturday morning. And then the afternoon, this is when things really hit the peak, that warm sector from Birmingham back down towards Meridian, Jackson, and all points in between. This is where I think we're going to see the worst of the tornado outbreak in that circled region on your map. There through Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. And then keeps on going. This is into the evening and overnight. Tornado ingredients continuing to maintain themselves even deep. This is about, midnight, 1 a.m. deep down towards Montgomery, Talladega, Destin, Pensacola, Panama City Beach. That area could see tornado threat into the overnight of Saturday and Sunday. Show you the significant tornado parameter as well for tomorrow. This is my first time looking at it on this model, but you see starting, this is this evening. That's the threat we already talked about. Continues into the overnight, and then another burst tomorrow morning. I mean, folks, check this out. SIGTOR parameters around 6 or 7. Again, we'll keep it going. Right here's the worst of it. Like I said, tornado outbreak. Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. Those are the states I'm most concerned about to see the strongest tornadoes. Like I said, don't sleep on Tennessee. I know you don't see a lot up here, but do not rule out a couple tornadoes near Nashville, back down towards kind of areas closer towards the Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi state lines there into southern Tennessee. Could see a couple tornadoes tomorrow, absolutely. As you can kind of see here during the evening and overnight, that tornado threat kind of tries to pull up towards Tennessee and then tracks all the way through Alabama and diminishes somewhat during the overnight, but still stays pretty active. All right, I did want to show you one sounding today. This is for tomorrow in basically Mississippi, Alabama state line, right during the peak of things. I mean, folks, this photograph is just ridiculous. It's not something you see very often. We've got winds from 0 to 1 kilometers just having insane speed differences, and that tells me the low-level jet is absolutely cranking. So right here at the surface, winds are going to be about 15 knots. You only go a kilometer up. Again, that's up to the low-level jet. You're cranking at 70 knots almost. That's just a recipe for tornadoes. I don't know how else to put it to you. That's just a recipe for tornadoes. But anytime you see this looping shape in a hodograph, that says trouble. And then our storm motion, another thing to add, I didn't even mention, the motion of these things, they're going to be booking at 50 to 60 knots. That's interstate speeds, folks. So you're going to get a warning issued, and you're going to need to get there quick because the thing's going to be flying at you. and it's definitely going to be an interesting day of storm chasing for any storm chasers down there, and I'll touch on that at the end of the video, by the way, kind of chasing these things. As for the thermodynamic side of things, I mean, LCL at about a perfect level for tornadoes. Cape values uptrending clearly near about 2,000 joules per kilogram. That's that shaded area between our parcel and our temperature line here. So definitely some Cape to work with. Convective inhibition right around negative or minus 51. That's also perfect. That tells me these storms could definitely stay discrete. So we're going to have a couple areas of explosions in the atmosphere of these supercells. If we had no Cape or no SIN, then I would think maybe this would be more of a messy line. But this is really a classic supercell high-end tornado producing parameter. I mean, this is about as textbook as it gets tomorrow. 3 Cape 74. Yep, that'll get the job done. Again, I'm just kind of looking at different numbers here on it. And yes, a significant tornado parameter with SIN included is about a 7.3. That's, yeah, not something you want to see. And final thing I'll talk about on this one, on this chart, down here in the bottom right, this is our effective layer STP values. So this red line, that's what is forecasted from the sounding tomorrow. That's right in the box that produces EF4 pluses and in the higher end of higher likelihood that we get an EF3 plus tornado. So again, classic significant tornado parameter. And if you don't believe me, possible hazard type PDS tour right here. So definitely just an off the chart kind of sounding there. Not something you want to see for tomorrow. And then that gets us into Sunday, final day of severe weather here to talk about. I'm not going to go too in depth on Sunday, but know there is a threat, a marginal risk all the way up to Albany, down to New York City, Bridgeport, Poughkeepsie, Scranton, into Trenton, Toms River, and then that slight risk, that level 2 out of 5 from Philly, Harrisburg, all the way south, DC, Baltimore, Richmond, Virginia Beach, Raleigh, Fayetteville, Charlotte, Columbia, into Augusta, Charleston, Savannah, Jackson, and into the Big Bend down towards Taylor County, Florida, in the Perry area where I have been chasing Helene before. So just kind of throw that one out there. Now, timing it out for you a little bit out this way. Not going to go super in depth, but this is Sunday morning. I think we're really going to start the day as really a line segment of storms from Ohio, likely all the way down to the Gulf Coast. The timing will be important. Obviously, if it moves through later in the day for your area in the afternoon, closer to peak heating, you're probably going to see stronger storms. So that would put, again, this is about 8 a.m. If we go right here to about 2 p.m., that would put areas in the highest risk. Personally, I think kind of Virginia down to eastern North Carolina, including the Delmarva and the Tidewater. That's where I would think the worst of it will be on Sunday. I think that's where we're going to have the highest overlapping of instability and wind shear. Question still remains to be seen, though. Does it stay a line all day, or right here the NAM even kind of tries to depict a little bit? Maybe we break out into more of a single or kind of discrete supercell look. If that happens, obviously higher in tornado threat and hail threat for the Sunday evening time frame. But either way, going to see strong straight line winds on Sunday at the very least. All right, one thing I forgot to pull up, and I'm going to kind of do it on the fly here, so let me pull it up on the fly, and while I do it, you can go ahead and look at this screen. So again, if you haven't already, go ahead, like, subscribe, all of those fun things. I'm going to pull up a map that I forgot to pull up. That is important. So here we go. All right. All right, these are wind gusts. So I forgot to pull this up. These are max wind gusts during the storm, basically, for you. This afternoon, I mean, it's absolutely rocking and rolling here in New Mexico, Texas. We're going to see pretty insane wind numbers out that way. You keep it going this evening. No walk in the park either in Missouri, Illinois, Indiana. Winds gusting 50 to 60 miles an hour. And anywhere within that line of storms into Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, kind of those states in specific, or specifically, could see 80 mile an hour wind gusts plus out of this. Would not surprise me at the surface at times. And then you go into tomorrow, stays quite breezy through the Great Lakes. Tomorrow night, you can see that line of storms. And by the way, the mountains of North Carolina, this could be one of the highest wind events we've seen since Helene. Not to compare it to Helene, but winds gusting at 60, 70 miles an hour up at those higher peaks. Definitely going to be a concern as that low-level jet rips through that area. So be prepared for that. And then stays windy. This is Sunday afternoon. Quite a breezy day in the Appalachia chain from North Carolina all the way up into New York. Again, it's going to stay breezy into the Catskills, into the Poconos, down into Pennsylvania, the Mid-Atlantic. A very breezy day. Strong straight line winds with that line of storms Sunday morning into Sunday afternoon and evening. Breezy Sunday night into the Northeast and New England, and then clears out by Monday afternoon. All right, folks, that was a long video, almost 30 minutes, and I only had so many tabs pulled up, so the fact it went that long is kind of impressive, I guess. With that said, though, have a way to get warnings tomorrow. Go ahead, share the video with friends and family. Tell them this is coming. We don't want anyone to be caught off guard. And again, if you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell for the latest notifications. Getting very close to 40,000, so that is exciting. I will add, I'm pretty sure I'm going to storm chase this thing into Dixie Alley on tomorrow, which might require me to leave tonight. I haven't quite decided when I'm going to leave, especially since it's backed up a little bit more towards Mississippi compared to maybe what it looked like a day or two ago. So I may not have a video again during the duration of this event. If I don't, follow me on Twitter or X. That will be linked down below in the description under my link tree. It says check out my socials. Click that, and then you'll see the X symbol or the Twitter symbol or whatever. I post updates on there regularly. I'll post storm chasing there. I may go live while I storm chase. So either way, I'll be storm chasing Saturday or Sunday. Probably Saturday, and maybe if I can, make the timing work, I'll do it through Sunday. Just make a bit of a chasecation out of it. This weekend, but just be prepared for that. Might not have another video breakdown of this before it's over, basically. All right, y'all have a great one. Stay safe, and I'll see you all next time.